and welcome to the North Coast Journal Preview, where we take a look at the stories being followed in the upcoming edition of the North Coast Journal. I'm your host, Dave Frank, and I'm joined by North Coast Journal's news editor, Thad Greenson, and arts and features editor, Jennifer Famico Cahill. Welcome, guys.
Hey, David. How you doing?
Pretty good, considering, we have this post-election, sigh of relief to a certain extent, but also the unknown of how it will actually fully resolve itself over the coming days, weeks, months. But I think that's a good segue to what you guys got going on in this week's edition of the North Coast Journal.
A lot of election in this week's edition, and I must confess I am very much looking forward to the day that I can go maybe a week without thinking about the word election or talking about an election, but we're not there yet, alas.
That day will never come, Dad. I'm so sorry.
I don't think it will. First, I guess on the local front, we have a story this week noting that we have 17,500 ballots outstanding that the elections office has and kind of in the queue to count. And they plan on releasing updates every Friday until they get through those. And it's kind of unclear. It sounds like at least another couple weeks of Friday updates, maybe 3. Until they get through those ballots. And the bulk of them are vote-by-mail ballots that arrived on or just prior to Election Day, or I guess in the couple days after that were postmarked by Election Day. I think that is, I forget the exact number, but it's the vast majority. And then they have a couple thousand provisional ballots that were cast at the polls that they need to vet and count if they prove valid. And then I think about 850 vote-by-mail ballots that were damaged and need to be replicated by an election staff person. So, somebody spilled coffee or food on them or used whiteout, which is a no-no.
The coffee, that was me. That. I'm sorry.
Or had identifying marks. Somebody wrote "hi" in the corner. All of our local ballots get scanned through an optical scanner, and images get put of them online through the Humboldt Election Transparency Project. Very cool, cutting edge project that has been in place for a handful of years now in Humboldt. But it allows kind of anybody to go do home recounts from the comforts of their couch and.
Oh, wow.
And whatnot. But the catch of that is that all the ballots need to not have identifying marks, because if, somebody puts their name in the corner or something, then their votes would no longer be private, A, and then B, it would raise kind of vote buying concerns and stuff like that if there was some way after the fact to verify how somebody voted.
Gotcha.
But anyway, that's a tangent. A few more weeks, and for the most part, most of the races in Humboldt County look really solid. There aren't too many cliffhangers, with the exception of 2. The Ferndale mayor race is separated by 8 votes right now, wow, with an unknown number outstanding, and then the second district supervisor race is, I believe, 197 vote margin. It's 51% to incumbent Estelle Fennell, and then 49 for challenger Michelle Bushnell. And we have not seen a district-by-district breakdown of how many ballots are outstanding, so we don't know how many are really at play, but that seems very much up in the air still.
So I noticed that the most recent report that you're referring to came out, I guess, Friday, and then you guys heard from the elections office about what's still left. And I think, if I remember the rough math, about 38% of the votes are still to be counted. It works out to, if you combine that with the election results from Friday, that's about 75% of eligible voters participated or registered. 75% of registered voters. Yeah. Any comment or feedback on that level of participation that we saw this election?
Yeah, that's the highest turnout that would be the highest turnout that I've seen since I've been covering elections in Humboldt County. Very high turnout. I think it's important to also recognize, though, that it's 75. It would be 75%, or I think 74% of registered voters, but it's only like 60% of eligible voters, and so. It's hard for me to get too excited about talking about what a wonderful turnout when all's said and done, maybe 40% of the people who could chose not to, file to vote and participate in the process. So I think that's still pretty disheartening.
What's the difference between those two categories, eligible and registered?
So, eligible is just anybody who's, not on parole and is 18 years or older, or not on parole or incarcerated and is 18 years or older. And then registered are people who actually have an active voter registration status.
So that's like almost a 15% difference between those two numbers. That's not small. I mean, I'm surprised to hear that's a pretty big gap, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, I want to say that like 110,000 people in Humboldt County are eligible, and yeah, we have I think about between 80 and 85,000 registered voters. So yeah, there's a substantial gap there.
Yeah. All right. Well, great. What else, you guys, besides the local election return status? What else are you looking at on the cover this week?
Yeah, we kind of threw together a cover package on the fly this weekend. Obviously, there's the big news
Okay,
that
don't tell them we threw it together on the fly.
we had no other choice. I mean, so we, news broke, Saturday morning that the major news networks, including the AP, were calling the presidential race for Joe Biden. And Jen and I kind of got on the phone, I don't know, a couple hours later, and we're talking about coverage. And we were reminded of what we did 4 years ago when Trump had kind of won in an upset. We had put out a call for opinion pieces and trying to get folks to weigh in on kind of what now. A variety of people from the local community, and so we decided to kind of run that idea back and sent out came up with a list of people we need, kind of community leaders, everybody from elected officials to the heads of nonprofits and stuff like that, and sent out a solicitation just saying, this has been kind of, we're on the back end of one of the most divisive presidential campaigns in history, and coming off one of the most divisive 4-year tenures of a president, in at least in recent memory, and so I kind of asking people to write something either looking back on the last 4 years or looking ahead at the next 4, and got a pretty wide swath of opinions. Unfortunately, the chair of the local Republican Party did not decline to participate, which was unfortunate. Would have liked to have his opinion in there, but I think we have a good spectrum. And
there were a couple of other people that we contacted who maybe did not have time to put in a piece, or, for whatever reason were prevented from doing it. And hopefully we'll get to hear from them as time goes on. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we gave people pretty short notice, because we go to press on Tuesday night and paper has to be proofread and laid out and all that stuff. So I think we got an email off to folks Saturday afternoon, and we're asking for submissions by Monday morning. So I think with that in mind, it was kind of impressive how many people dropped what they were doing to write up something for us.
And not just how many. I mean, the I guess level of insight and thoughtfulness was was really enjoyable to read. And I don't know what the right superlative is, but I was actually heartened to hear some of these perspectives. Did any of them, for example, I know there were a few environmental organizations and a few other nonprofits, a few police officers, at least one local politician. Did anything stand out to you as something that was a highlight that kind of could, make our short little teaser about, of course, everyone's going to go read the story online or go pick it up, but can you give us a little teaser about some of these insights?
I mean, personally, I'd be curious to hear what Jen has to say, but I wouldn't. There was no one that I would kind of plug as the go-to one to read. But I would say that we hear so much about these presidential elections from so many different viewpoints, and so many of them are just from a national perspective, talking heads on television or columnists in national papers or national publications. And so to me, it's just interesting to hear local perspectives from different segments, from locals who work in law enforcement to locals who work in really collaborative nonprofit environments, to folks who work, advocating for immigrants' rights locally. So just seeing kind of the local perspective of this big national event through all these different lenses, to me, was the really fascinating part.
Yeah, and I think some of the folks who were speaking kind of on behalf, at least semi on behalf of their, sharing their own personal feelings, but speaking on behalf of organizations. Jen Savage, who is a frequent contributor to the Journal, was speaking on behalf of Surfrider. And, her focus was very Surfrider in that it's very much about, of course, Ocean Conservancy, but also about direct action and about practical, okay, here's what we do next. There's really no time for them to do any kind of touchdown dance or hand wringing or whatever. They just have to keep pushing. Likewise, the perspective of the local police was really different from, as one can imagine. Yeah. Even between Arcata and Eureka's, police departments. The approach, the response was really different from Steve Watson in Eureka versus Ahern in Arcata. So am I saying his name right, Ahern?
Ahern? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. I realize I've only proofread it. I've never said it out loud. So, but anyway, hearing, everybody's different positions, one that I found really fascinating was Mitch Trachtenberg, who last night I mentioned to Thad, like he had written an opinion piece. How was it, a month ago? Less?
Less than that, just a few weeks ago, yeah.
My God, time means nothing. So it was just a couple of weeks ago, and it was way more reach out, understand each other, etc. And the tone was very different in this week's. And I mean, and I look at it and I think, you know what? I read his other piece, which was about the importance of understanding how people come to really exclusionary, really aggressive, angry politics. And I understood the perspective. I could see where he was coming from and the value of that approach. At the same time, this week, he's just done. He's in Dunsville. And, I understand that too. And it's really interesting to see the shift in his thinking, the shift in his feeling over, a couple of weeks and a wild, wild week at the end there.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, thank you for sharing those insights about the things that stood out to you. I would say that there were a set of folks who were saying, look, our environmental / climate situation got worse in the recent past and needs to get better in the future. And similar with immigration and other issues about, like, for example, Black, Indigenous, people of color. There was a call out for progress, basically. An acknowledgement of kind of where we were for 4 years through Saturday, and then this aspirational aspect to where we might go. So a bunch of them sort of tapped into their own little version of that. I don't mean little, but their own flavor of that, just based on where they're coming from. I think now's a good time to mention that you guys also have a piece in this week's edition where you provide your own insights as the editors on behalf of the North Coast Journal about like where we are, like a finger to the wind from the local community's perspective. I don't know, Jennifer, do you want to pick up on that? What you guys prepared, and what your take is on where we stand now?
Well, the editorial, look at that smiling. The editorial response, which was a group effort. It's sort of funny when you are working on an editorial piece together with other people. Mostly we agree, I think. I think that we as a news team in general, our newsroom, we tend to be on similar pages, although not always the same. And when we, pass something back and forth, we tweak it and change it. And, Thad's initial approach to the response to the election, I always, and to anything, honestly, I'm always looking at it and thinking like, my God, he's productive. Like everything is fairly, not necessarily optimistic, but definitely productive. And I look at how, at the perspective that my colleagues bring in on these moments. And, generally I add swearing that they take out later. And, but it's a kind of a look at how national politics, we become obsessed with it, of course, because it matters tremendously. And we look at how national politics has changed the local mood in Humboldt County, and how, over 4 years and more, if you include the campaigns, how this period of divisive politics and vitriol and racism and misogyny and, this tone of, simmering violence, how this has really changed us and where it's left us. And, I think what we came to with, cooler heads than mine probably, was that there are things that we can do locally, and they may not be about, necessarily, they may not be about wrestling directly with the things that have been divisive for us. They absolutely can be, but there are other things too that we can do to make our world better here. And that it is not always going to be about changing things in Washington or in Georgia, although those things are for sure valuable and plenty of people will be devoting time to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, I mean, personally, well, I guess we'll just be plain that, Jennifer and I have made no bones about our misgivings about our current president, soon to be ex-president. And, we have editorialized repeatedly, deeming him unfit for office, racist, that, espousing our worst qualities as a society. And so, something that was, I think a lot of people experience this is feeling kind of a desperate need for change to get him out of office. And really, politics aside, I mean, I'm just speaking from a decency and a competency and a morality standpoint. So I think a lot of people on Saturday morning, when networks finally called this race, felt these dueling emotions. One of being really relieved and in some sense of happy, and then the other of just kind of being a little bit disillusioned or even a little bit angry at how close this race has been, and how kind of coming to terms with how 70 million people in this country have looked at his job performance over the last 4 years and thought, yeah, we want more of this. And so at once, I mean, I felt like it's important to say, to kind of speak to that disillusion of saying, I don't know how to speak to those folks. And I don't know how to convince them that just the daily degradation of that office means something and should mean something. And but at the same time, and I especially don't know how to speak to those voters in Georgia or the South or anything like that. But at the same time, we know what our values are in Humboldt County, or what our best values are, and the thing that I hope some folks channel the emotional energy that they spent on the presidential election into the local community. And I think the more that we can do that, and the more we can live our best values here, street by street, neighborhood by neighborhood, community by community, I just have to believe that means something, and will ultimately start to tip us toward being a more understanding and more unified nation. But it's got to start at the local level.
Yeah, and in all frankness, I think that for me, I really value the approach that that is talking about, partly because when it comes to the folks who decided to align themselves with, especially with the racism and the misogyny of this administration, and with, the treatment of immigrants, it is easier for a person who is unaffected directly by those things to say, we can reach across, we can look past our political differences. For someone who is, for example, stuck in an Asian body, the comments about things like the coronavirus and China, those things change my interactions with other people in my county. They're very real and they're very direct. And the people who were in support of that and excited about that, I still have to go to the supermarket with them. So I don't know how to approach that, in all frankness. I don't know how to fix that. I don't know that it's for me to fix, or if it's possible within my reach. But other things are within my reach. Other things to improve my world, to improve my life, and to improve the life of other people too.
Well, right on. I when looking at what you guys prepared, I thought it was, inspiring. Again, I know I used that word before, but really is inspiring to just to self-assess and say, look, we don't have the capacity to change the national conversation, nor the conversations in other states, nor other counties, nor other towns. But thankfully, we can start at home. That's digestible, manageable, and at least it's within reach. So I think that, Jennifer, while you point out that there's, it's hard for everybody to adjust to the 4 years of Trump, what we had to endure in terms of how civil discourse was damaged, that now we realize that we have another opportunity maybe that the national tone and the state tone could inspire us a little. No, I don't want to keep using inspire, but set the tone basically for us to do what we can do back at home. So thank you guys for definitely for sharing that with the community. I think it's important for people to hear it.
And on a somewhat lighter note, I would be remiss if we left this program without me pointing you all toward, not that it's a solution, but I'm not saying it's not a solution. The wonderful Bob Stockwell, if you ever went and got wine at the co-op and had to ask someone for advice, if you were very lucky, a man with a beard and glasses and a very gentle demeanor came out and helped you. And he is helping you this week by explaining to you how he and his 20 some odd year wine club friends managed to keep their wine club going, their wine tasting gig every Monday night in COVID. And they did it by doing like sample bottles left on someone's porch, everybody picking them up and then going home and Zooming. And they are serious people. They are not here for my box of Franzia to come being left on their porch. But they are, they do this thing where they sip and they try and guess the region and the vintage and everything else. They're hardcore. But now they are leaving little mason jars of unlabeled mystery wines and then Zooming and trying to guess and trying to focus on something other than our stressful world, than the pandemic and everything else. And it's a pretty great read, and it's a pretty great suggestion. And I strongly encourage people to try it, even if you're not doing wine, even if you are a person who does not drink. Have you thought about cookies? I don't know. Have you thought about ice cream tasting? I mean, we could expand this. It's the sharing that really spoke to me.
The sharing and the regimented nature of it, that they do this every Monday, which is just awesome. In this time of COVID, I think we all need something like that.
Yes.
And there's a degree of continuity too, like you're alluding to, Thad, where they did this before and then they took some time off and then they realized, well, we could do this, like we can make this work. And it's that, I don't know, like I said, that routine, maybe that comfort zone. And at the same time, you're no longer isolated, even though you're drinking alone or with whoever lives in your bubble, your pod, but you're also sharing online. So I thought that was a really cool way to do it.
Yeah, they really decided they needed it. And I kind of love it.
And I like your recommendation too, Jennifer, that we consider doing things like baked goods or growlers or There's plenty of things. There's plenty of ways to bond. So this is really cool. Like you said, it's lighter and it's also it's a positive thing that we can do to put some normalcy into our routine where we're not super negatively impacted by the COVID stay at home, which we're still living under as things get worse around us.
Yeah. Well, in an age of divisiveness and isolation, connection is the key. We all need to be as connected as possible.
Well, right on. Thank you, guys.
Bread. Let's have a bread club.
Homemade bread's a
bread.
good thing. Yeah. And soup. Bread and soup. It's winter, right? It's time for comfort food. Well, that's going to just about do us for us this week. North Coast Journal is on newsstands now. Pick one up, or they're online. Stay informed. Thad, Jennifer, thank you so much, and we'll see you guys again next week.
See you next week.